All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Fintech Fridays. I'm Brian Vieaux, President, Chief Operating Officer at FinLocker, and I'm super pumped to have Sean Grapevine join us. Sean is a leader, branch manager at UMortgage. Started to engage with Sean here for the last few months and have been following your content, and I just kind of had a couple aha moments. I'm like, I got to get this guy on and kind of talk about this approach you're taking. So first of all, Sean, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to chat.
So normally, I'll say normally, whatever normal means, but most of the time I'm talking to folks that are kind of squarely in the technology side of the business. On occasion, we've had some originators and lenders on, and usually those conversations were heavy tech focused. I think this one's going to be heavy tech focused, but what I'm super pumped about is I think the applicability of your message will resonate with anybody that's in mortgage lending. And frankly, it doesn't matter where they sit in terms of channel. The way you're thinking about kind of the sales process is really interesting to me. And I just want to get right into it, man, and just kind of have you start riffing on how you look at kind of the traditional sales process in mortgage versus how you're approaching it today. And then, of course, how you think about that in the context of your tech stack. So I'm going to kind of go on mute and let you go for a bit.
Wow.
And then I'll jump in here.
All right. In 25 minutes when I'm done, just let me know what you think. So I appreciate that lead in. Yeah, so I've been in LO for 8 years now, and kind of came to like being in LO pretty circuitously. I was a line cook, and then I worked as a barista, and then my boss identified me as he was like, you'd probably be good at sales, and he was like, you should do our wholesale coffee bean selling to like other markets and cafes and restaurants and stuff like that. I did that for a while. There's no money in it, and it's impossible, right? Like everyone that sells coffee, like already has coffee. It was cheaper than what we were offering, and they didn't care about it. So it was like literally the hardest product to sell. I was pretty good at it, but it also doesn't pay. So I was like, all right, I'm good at this. I'm gonna go do something that like I can get started in tomorrow and start making some money. So I started in car sales, and did pretty well in car sales, but you really have to sell your soul. And like in the market or dealership or, like the channel I was in, you had to lie to be good. And I was like a little too good at lying for like my own conscience. I was like, I was like, I'm way too good at this. So I literally like crisis of conscience left and went to join the mortgage industry because I was like, I don't have a college degree, which you don't need, and the licensing only took like 4 or 6 weeks. And the, upside is huge. And I liked that there were regulations. I was like probably the only person, right? This is like right before TRID came out. Everybody was like, this is going to be a nightmare. And I was like, oh, it's so good. You guys have no idea what it's like to sell into like a place where lying is encouraged. And so went to mortgages and, really like, I loved the technician side of mortgages. I loved pricing things, loved negotiating. I loved structuring deals. I read Fannie Mae guidelines every night before bed kind of thing. I was just like lived and breathed like putting together mortgages. I loved running AUS. I loved trying to figure things out. I loved like sneaky, tricks and workarounds and stuff like that. And I forced myself to be a really, I don't know if not really good salesman, but a really motivated salesman. Anyway, I'm actually a horrible salesperson, but I was like, I know that if I just like grin and bear it, I can like be salesy, like do enough sales to actually like start a book of business that starts referring itself to me. So I went after real estate agents and I called 1,000 real estate agents in my first 6 months. And it was like a list. It didn't have any production numbers on there. All I had was a phone number and an email address. And I didn't put it in a CRM. I didn't do follow-up calls. I didn't do follow-up texts. I didn't do follow-up emails unless they were like, yeah, will you send me something? And literally out of those like 1,000 agents, I won like 4, maybe 6 of them, somewhere in there. Stunning 0.6% conversion ratio, which in any industry is just like, pathetic. And it was also like the glory days of like the mid 2010s, like low interest rates, growing market, everybody's credit score is on the way up. foreclosures were pretty much like, wrapped up. So, it was even worse than it sounds. Like, maybe 0.5 would be right now. Like, okay, but wasn't good then. Anyway, but like, that's enough, right? You only need 5 or 6 decent agents sending you business to like make 6 figures as an LO. I mean, that's the trick. Is like, you just got to get there. And then from there, my like excelling at being a technician allowed me, like, because I was a very good LO. So like that allowed me to build my book of business. Every time there was, every time I got a contract in, there's a listing agent on the other side. And I would call them, and this is like the one piece of sales I would do for like the last 6 years. I would call them and say, hey, if I do a great job, will you send me the rest of like all your business from here on out? Right. Yeah, it was a little bit more polished than that. and like 50% of the time they said no, 50% of the time they said yes. And then, most of the time I did do a good job. And then 50% of the time they came through on their word. And so there's a snowball effect of that, like actually a loan officer who's a good technician can slowly build a book of business without doing very much networking, without doing very much like cold calling. And it got me to, the 40 and 50 and $60 million a year mark, which is like, dream, right? Like that's perfect. And like, but it was slow. So it went from 2015 to like those numbers finally starting to hit 2019. And then obviously refis and stuff in 2020, 2021. But I saw my my purchase referral business growing by 50% per year, which was good. But like it took me a long time to get to the point where like now looking back, I'm like, man, I could have gotten here way easier. So that was kind of my LO journey. In the middle of all this, in 2020, I realized that what was why people liked using me was because I would keep people updated every step of the way. So I would either use like Flowify or I would do it manually or something like that. And so if something was submitted to underwriting, all the agents and the client and everybody else, whoever's on the deal, got a text message and an email notification saying, hey, your loan's submitted to underwriting. Like when we ordered the appraisal was assigned to an appraiser. The inspection happened and the report came back and title was over, like all those things. And I think like maybe people don't do that much or like see it as I don't know why people don't do it very much. To me, right. Maybe they think it's like too much information. They don't want to like pester anybody. But the example I always use is like, so I fly, like I live in Atlanta, so I fly Delta. And I'm sure other airlines do this too, but I've got the Delta app. When I get on the plane, it gives me a notification. Hey, your bag is now on the plane, right?
No better feeling.
Right. But the thing is like, before they started giving that notification, how many times did you sit wondering to yourself, like, is my bag on the plane? You just kind of assumed It was, right? Like, hoped and assumed 99% of the time that it was. So it was a notification, and it's not obtrusive, but it's extra information, and it kind of like you get like a little dopamine hit. You're like, nice, yeah. Somebody's in charge of this, and somebody's taking care of it. So I built a small like software solution. It's called Loan Shout, and it allows loan officers to send text message and email updates and have a persistent dashboard that people can visit. And it's super simple, but like people loved it. So I really got involved in the tech space and like learning everything there was to know about tech sales at that point. I don't want to be too boring. Is this too long of an explanation?
This is great. No, I think it's okay. What's cool is you painted the picture of where you came from, how you learned the business in the trenches, but now you're morphing in really where you're getting to is how you scale that expertise, and that's I think it's all part of the process.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So what I learned, Loan Chat was I wouldn't call it a flop. I think it's awesome. I'm the world's worst salesman. And you have to be great at sales or hire a sales team to do well, as you know, with like SaaS sales. And I'm just like not a software salesperson, turns out. So, but when I was learning all about it, I learned the setup of contemporary sales structures that like everywhere from, enterprise to small to medium sized businesses to like small businesses, is way different than mortgages. And like, as I like delve further and further into it, there's just this glaring difference between how mortgage origination sales, right? Like just calling it sales, right? Like however you get your clients, that's sales. And like the rest of the world. And I'm like, okay, so if Microsoft and Salesforce and Oracle and Cisco and Slack and, you know, whatever, like all these software businesses are spending, $1 trillion a year on sales enablement research and sales research, and this is how they've decided to do it, then what is the mortgage world doing? Like, this has got to be a better way. And the way they do it is, believe it or not, they divide people into like the things that they're actually good at, and they divide up the sales process, not a ton, but like between different roles. And what I began to realize, and this is what I realized in the mid 2010s as I was a loan officer, and I've kind of already said it, is like, I'm a great technician, but a bad salesperson. And what happens in the mortgage world is that the LO role is both of those put together. What ends up happening is you have people who are great at one and bad at the other, or vice versa. And then you have like your LeBron Jameses and your Michael Jordans of origination who happen to be great at both, right? Like it's a genetic, like they're genetic freaks, right? It's like it doesn't matter how many like three-pointers you practice taking, you're just not going to hit as many as LeBron James or whoever, right? Like it's just not going to happen. You're not going to get there. But what the mortgage world tries to do is like model yourself after, like, take Jimmy Hobson for instance. Like the mortgage world might say, hey, try and be like Jimmy Hobson, the #1 VA loan officer in the country. Like the guy's a legend. He's a machine. And it's like, I just know that I'm never going to be Jimmy Hobson. Like, I need to be in my core competency. Jimmy Hobson wakes up early. He eats loans for breakfast. He's networking. He's researching. He's somehow originating loans while maintaining his referral network and managing loan officers. They're like doing all these things. It's like totally unsustainable for anybody who's not like legendary status, like Jimmy Hobson. And so I was like, what if we did this? This is crazy. What if we had somebody out doing sales, loan sales, right? Like licensed originators who were tech enabled, who had great CRMs, who had all of the information and data that they needed to reach out to real estate agents or divorce attorneys or CPAs or financial advisors. And that for 40 hours a week, they actually just did that and formed relationships. They know a lot about mortgages. They are loan officers. But when the loan comes in, they say, hey, thank you so much for filling out your application. Here's my assistant or inside loan officer or whatever. Andrew, he's actually the structuring and pricing genius. He's going to actually hold your hand while we build your loan app to make it as easy on you as possible and to get you the best combination of rates and fees possible. He's going to actually help you take this from here to contract to closing. And then that outside LO turns around and goes back out and washes their hands of it and is just sort of the figurehead of the transaction. And we really found a lot of success. Like we started this about 6 months ago, and we found so much success doing this in our branch. It frees up people who are great at one thing, do that thing, frees up the people who are great at the other to go do that thing. And like, you could possibly do this with pen and paper or an Excel spreadsheet, but having like a great CRM, having fantastic automations, having a great LOS like Arrive, having a place where like credit challenge people have a route to go, like FinLocker or something like that. Having all of these like paths set up that are just pre-programmed, and all you have to do is just move them in that direction, has been huge. And now we have people out there that love making phone calls and hate doing mortgages, doing that. And we have people who love doing mortgages and hate making phone calls, doing that. Yeah. And like, we've seen people get happier and make more money.
That was going to be my question is when you kind of first launched or introduced, I'm curious what the mindset of was at the individual level. So if I'm the loan officer that was doing everything, clearly you had the vision to say, I'm just making this up, you have 6 LOs, you 3 are really good at the sourcing of business, and you 3 are exceptional at the deal structuring. How'd those conversations go to kind of convince those folks that this was going to be the best path for them going forward?
Oh, it's not. It's like it's just so natural. I get a little pushback on LinkedIn, especially from like $20 to $30 million a year producers who have grinded it out to get to like that place of like self-sufficient and like true experts. But the thing is, like, here's the truth of the matter is, all right, say you do turn into that 40, 50, $60 million a year producer, which is really like the cap of like before you get into like legendary stuff where it's like you were probably going to get there no matter what situation you were in. And by that point, and this happened to me, so I got there and then I pretty much turned my LOA, gave them more and more responsibility as I got busier and busier. And then eventually by the end of it, the client would call and be like, all right, sweet, I'm going to hand you off to Andrew Meister. He's like LOA extraordinaire. He's basically my inside loan officer. So the crazy thing is you spend 5-7 years getting good enough to hand off the expertise role. Anyway, it's like, why, like, how many people are we losing during that 5 to 7 year, just like grinding period that like we never even had to lose them to the grind to begin with. Like, they're not getting bogged down. So like it naturally happens anyway. And so like in branch, it was just like, hey, who wants to sign up for like making cold calls 40 hours a week? Like 3 people were like, I would love to do that. Right. You're like, okay, sweet. It's very rare to hear somebody say they would love to do it. You're in. Everybody else is like, I love guidelines. All right, sweet. You're in. It's definitely, I mean, making sure that everybody's capacity is balanced, it has been definitely difficult just because we're doing this on such a small scale. As we build this team more and more, there's more like ability to be like, all right, like an inside LO can really handle two like medium volume outside LOs or 1 mega outside LO or 4 sort of brand new outside LO. So it's like the capacity thing has definitely been interesting, but as far as putting people where they're meant to be, it's like so easy.
So you're definitely I know you're raising some eyebrows on the platforms with your content, and so set aside the naysayers. They're always going to be there, and look at. I think we all agree that there's no right or wrong model. It's what works for you at the end of the day, right? You've proven out that this model works for you, and one could assume that it could be replicated in other markets with other teams that have the same mindset as you. So I want to be careful to say it's not a one size fits all, because even at UMortgage, you guys have a bunch of different kind of models within the model, which is really one of the unique value props, I think, of the company. But how are you now kind of taking what you've learned and perfected and continue to build and perfect and sharing that outside of your kind of world? Is that happening kind of organically for you?
So yeah, absolutely. So we get a lot of interest through LinkedIn, and one of the hard parts has been like, for me to run this team is like my branch is only licensed in the Southeast, and so it's been hard to like. We have people recruit, or like the recruiting efforts have tons of applications from across the country for both jobs. Unfortunately, it's like I can't really administer that outside of our branch for now. We actually are spinning up like a division of UMortgage that is this. Like we don't have a name for it yet, but like Consumer Direct has existed for eons and is really struggling right now. All the inside LO applicants I get right now are Consumer Direct LOs that are like, well, I already did this. Like, now it's like, now it's a slam dunk lead. Of course I'll take 50 bips to close a deal that like they've already filled out an application. There's trust. Like it's a 70% close rate. And so there are tons of people out there. And so this is more like an agent direct channel. Doesn't really exist right now. It's sort of the account managers on the outside, right? You've got that inside LO on the inside. And this is typical to the tech world too, right? You have an SDR or a BDR on the outside. All they're doing, like in the tech world, and this, and I just learned this in the last few years. Like in the tech world, there's a person who just goes out there and creates they're called ops opportunities, right? Instead of leads. But they go out and they say, hey, like, would you guys be interested in doing a demo of this product? Like you get calls from them all the time, I'm sure. And would you be interested in doing a demo of this product? Here are the cool things about it. Here's what it can help you do. Here's the features. Here's the benefits. That kind of thing. The person says yes. Now it's not up to that person to then do the demo and then do the pricing and then hand it off to ops. It's like they hand it off to their account executive on the inside and they go back out and sell some more. And so we're really looking at turning this into a scalable and repeatable model. And I honestly think that we can turn a motivated salesperson into a $50 million a year producer within a year, like that. All they have to do, if they make the calls, they send the texts, if they send the newsletters, if they do the events, if they go out, like if they do all the things that we have outlined in our CRM that are tasked to them, if they hit their KPIs and their quotas, like to turn yourself into a $50 million producer should be relatively simple, because you're not, I mean, people become victims of their own success. I know when I was super slammed, when I was getting closer to that, it just bogs, like all of a sudden I was like putting together deals for 12 hours a day, and then
you're not making not making new calls. Yeah,
exactly. And so you take away all of this drag, and you can really enable people to go nuts.
And just kind of thinking about it, from putting myself in the shoes of a real estate professional, I actually feel now like I don't have Sean as my guy. I have a team that Sean leads that's supporting my business. And it just feels like a better, a more valuable sales proposition, if you will, for that agent.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I think a lot of the naysayers would be like, well, like you're handing it off to another LO, like what's the agent going to think? And it's like, well, think about it like the way an agent sees me or somebody who's like doing enough business to have an assistant anyway. Like they know when they call me, I'm handing the deal off to my assistant and I'm watching over it. Like, so it's already going to add like a level of credibility. Like, oh, this dude has a team. That's crazy. That like you wouldn't get if you're just sitting there doing it all alone. And I really think that the mortgage world is like, so I've not only have I started a software business that doesn't go anywhere, but also like a couple of e-commerce brands, and also haven't gone anywhere. But I learn a lot along the way. And one of the big things with e-commerce is credibility, multiple omni-channel touch points that lend to credibility. Right? You got to have Trustpilot on your on your site. You got to be mentioned by influencers. Right? This is building like credibility and like levels of backlinking and stuff like that. You got to be featured on a blog. Somebody's got to see you in a TV show or something like that. And like every time you get those little pieces of additional information, it adds credibility. The current loan officer doesn't get any of that. They're the only person talking to their referral partners.
Right.
And a lot of them is like, okay, well, what about brand recognition? I mean, brand recognition in mortgages, as far as real estate agents are concerned, 99% of the time, that's a bad thing. They're not like, oh, that's Sean. He works for, insert giant retail bank name here. Now I really trust him. Like,
yeah,
it's usually like, oh, that's Sean. He's great, even though he works for insert giant retail bank there. So like brand recognition is usually bad. UMortgage is setting out to change that. But it's usually not a good thing. But, what if like you're the outside salesperson, you're making these calls, the person doesn't really know you from Adam, and like they're worried about it. And then their sales manager calls. What if I call behind one of my outside LOs? I'm like, hey, Rasan said he's had a great time, like creating a relationship with you over the past few weeks. Says you do a bunch of business and are a ton of fun, and that it sounds like you guys would work really well together. They're like, oh, who's this? I'm like, oh, this is Sean. I'm the sales manager, whatever, branch manager, VP, or like say whatever you want of over here at UMortgage. Just wanted to reach out and say thanks, and we'd love to send you a hoodie, something like that. They're like, oh, this is a real company with real people. This guy has oversight and accountability, and my credibility is like increased. Everybody's credibility has increased there. And so I think that the outside sales role isn't like, oh, this guy's just out there guy or girl is just out there, not creating actual deals, doesn't know anything about mortgages. It's like, no, this person's just doing what they do best, and there are other people behind them doing what they do best.
Right. Yeah, I think so I've been at this mortgage thing for a long time. Obviously, I'm in the tech side now, but before coming here, I spent almost 30 years, in mortgage. So I was, doing mortgages in the early 90s. And this concept is nothing new, right? This is nothing that hasn't been tried and done before, but it hasn't been done successfully to where it's scaled. And I think what's resonating with what I'm kind of the content you're putting out and what I'm seeing from you is that at a local level, you figured out how to bring the best of the individual's skill sets, mesh them together. So that's the people part of it. But maybe for the last part of the conversation, let's just talk about how you layered on top or around the people the tech stack, because I think that's a pretty important component of the full equation.
Yeah, for sure. Here's the thing. The rest of the world is when they do sales, it's omni-channel, right? It's not just the phone. It's there's geo fencing and all that stuff. And you're just not going to have as much success. Well, I'll tell you this. When I was talking to account executives at software companies, when they were like asking them like, okay, how many touch points does it take to make a sale to a B2B client, right? With maybe a $500,000 average contract value, which coincidentally is about, the average home contract value.
Right.
And they were like, 20 to 40 touch points. That's like, oh, wow. How many, and that, I mean, how many touch points does it take you to like close somebody on FinLocker? Probably like 80. I mean, this is an enterprise. Yeah. It's got to be like, and what's the timeline? It's not a week. It's not 2 weeks. It's like at least 2 or 3. Yeah, at least 2 or 3 months. And you can't have all your touch points. Like talk about obtrusive, like being obtrusive. Like you can't have all your touch points be texts and phone calls. Like that's annoying. You become like a cold call, just sort of like typical like account executive just blowing people up. And so what we've done is we have like set up so many things that have that like sales enablement tools that allow our loan officers to have those 20 to 40 touch points over the course of say 12. We usually go in 12-week sprints. So it always starts with a phone call, but once they log the phone call, they get an automatic task to send a text message. We're actually like integrating the actual text message to go out automatically as well. It tasks them with the next day connecting on LinkedIn and the next day sending a Facebook friend request, right? So already you're at 4. Every once a week, we send a newsletter on our loan officer's behalf. Those all go out automatically. The loan officer doesn't have to think about it at all. And like all of these things we pay for, which is totally different than the right? Like the average loan officer, the reason they have so much flexibility is because mortgage companies put all of the responsibility on the loan officer to be little mini CEOs. And then when they ask him to do things, the loan officer says, no, I'm paying $400 a month in tech fees here. I could just take my business. So I could just go work here, go work here, go work here. This is different. Like we're providing like a huge service so that like people want to be a part of what we're doing. And it creates stickiness and retention and like affection. So we have all of those like automated tasks. We have the automated newsletter. So, that's 12 touch points in 12 weeks. We enable our loan officers to send mass text messages, right? With like little, like every other Friday, we send a mass text message that says, hey, real estate agent, just want to let you know I'll be in the office all weekend working on pre-approvals. Let me know if you need anything. I'm happy to help out, right? So that's 6 more touch points. And then they'll send one-off like plain text emails as well. We also, if they send a pre-approved buyer, like a buyer to us, and then we pre-approve them, we like our system. We use Zapier to automatically send a handwritten note to the real estate agent and to the client. So that's like that's another touch point. And like physical mail, like that should count for like 5 touch points. Huge. And then we leverage like all of these things to drive people to events that we throw on the loan officer's behalf. That like we use like our tech stack is, so we use Pipedrive as our CRM. We build our emails in something called Stripo. We use an app called Reach to allow our loan officers to send mass iMessages, not just text messages, like blue bubble iMessages from their phones to all of their contacts. And then we build a Google event website for their event. And then we accept RSVPs through an app called ClickUp. And we use Slack to communicate about all of this. We get Slack updates through each one of our tech stack pieces into like about specific borrowers, about like RSVPs and stuff like that. We track KPIs like phone calls, emails, text messages, that kind of thing, through Pipedrive to make sure that loan officers, like we're holding them accountable to what they said they wanted to do. We have income planning sessions with them in order to develop those KPIs. Oh, you want to make $300,000 by the end of the year? Well, that's going to be 750 agents contacted this year, which means that's 85 agents contacted per quarter. If you're winning 4% of them, and your average deal size is 3. It's like, so we're like we're putting all of this together, and we're trying to keep it as simple as possible. We're like the fewer pieces, and then we also use like FinLocker too, right? So if we like. Everybody goes into it after after they close after their deal closes to be part of like ecosystem, but especially if we have credit challenges and we want to maintain relationship and continue to like look into who's doing what, who's ready, who's credit ready, that kind of thing. Then we have that channel too, which is where a lot of loan officers, right? Like everybody says, hey, it's not if you're qualified for a mortgage, it's when. But then they don't have anything to follow up with that. And tools like FinLocker allow us to keep track of people that way. So it's all integrated together through Zapier or through native integrations. But it's basically Pipedrive CRM, which it's not the perfect CRM, but like we use it and it works. And we use handwritten.com for our handwritten notes. We use ClickUp for all of our project management and event RSVPs. We use Google Sites to develop our event pages and Zapier to put it all together. And then we do all of our communication through Slack. Like loan officers who aren't using Slack or Teams, like I don't know how.
Right.
They must just feel so on their own. Like I'm in Slack all day, every day. I think our branch sent like 27,000 Slack messages in December. It's crazy.
That's wild.
But that means we don't have meetings and we don't have phone calls.
Yeah. Yep. You get everything it's real-time resolution, which is the beauty of those channels. So man, this has been like, for me, what I enjoy about doing this podcast is learning something new. And usually it's new technology, like I said on the onset, but you've kind of just laid out the blueprint, if you will, for success. So, you're out there on the social media channels, you're heavy on LinkedIn. I'm guessing it's okay if people reach out and ask you questions. That's kind of why you're doing what you're doing, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I really want people to succeed. I think that like becoming a big part of our team is going to be the best way to do that, because we're really like, we are going all in. But like if you want 20 minutes or 30 minutes of my time to like talk about your ideas or like how you can implement these ideas, if you're out on your own, you're an independent loan officer and you can't divide up your role between yourself and somebody else, and you just are where you are, that's not going to be a possibility. Like you could still implement like 90% of this and have so much. It's all about like, for us, it's a numbers game. It's about a numbers game and then holding yourself accountable to those numbers and making sure that like you are getting in as many touch points as possible. And the sale eventually ends up like happening itself, right? Like, so, UMortgage is a huge, supporter of FinLocker. And, I don't think it doesn't like, you didn't call Anthony one day and you're like, hey, listen, I'm Brian. You've never met me before. Like, will you guys be my customer? Here's the great things about FinLocker. It's like you develop the relationship, go through the entire process, right? Whether it's a couple months or a couple of years, thousands, right? You see him at events, he sees you on social media, that kind of thing. And finally, one day he's like, you know what we need? We need something exactly like FinLocker. He calls you, right? It's the inbound play, but it's the result of like really many touch points and developing a great relationship and a great persona. So I'm happy to help people put that together for free.
I love it. Well, Sean, this has been super interesting, super helpful. Looking forward to kind of seeing your platforms continue to scale, not just down in the Southeast, but kind of nationwide, if you will. So thanks again for joining. Thanks everybody for visiting us for another episode of FinTech Fridays, and we'll see you all next Friday.
Yeah, been super fun. Thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you.